Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, VJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to subscribe, share on social media, and bring others along with us on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. We are in our series, and we're calling it Post-Pandemic, Episode 28, PPE for Leaders.
PPE.
PPE.
For leaders.
Is there a way you're supposed to say PPE? Is it PPE or is it PPE? Or?
I have no idea.
Okay.
So, so we're in part 3 of this series, Post-Pandemic. And we saw within everything within the coronavirus, the just how important it was to have personal protective equipment for frontline workers and for everyone as a whole, that it was too dangerous for them to go out with personal protection. And so today we are going to talk about personal protective equipment for leaders, how you can protect yourself so leadership doesn't consume you. Now, here's my waiver, okay? There's a chance you might not care a bit about this. Here's my guess, is that if you're someone who doesn't care a bit about this, you probably need this, okay? If the idea of this personal protective equipment for leaders is like, I don't need that self-care. I don't need that whatever you want to describe it. I don't need that rest. I know what's going to come in. I need to take care of myself physically. I need to have a hobby. I need to have friends. These are good things. This is important for me as a leader, blah. We're going to take a different take on it today. And so I hope it's really helpful because that's my desire. I really want to help you within this. So a little bit of context in terms of why we're talking about this in light of everything within this post-pandemic series. We saw, especially in the early stages, the recommendations on personal protective equipment change drastically. Like, it was crazy. Like, I can remember there was one day I was listening to a press conference that was saying masks aren't important. And 2 days later, it was like, we're in this desperate need for masks for frontline workers. And then it was no civilian needs to wear a mask. And then all of a sudden, my social media feed was flooded with all of these illustrations. They're like, hey, if neither of you are wearing a mask, this is your percentage chances of contracting the disease. But if both of you are wearing a mask, this is how much it goes down. And it was this nature of, they didn't fully know what the disease was. They didn't fully know what the virus was doing. And the personal protective equipment changes based upon the virus. Because it was a respiratory virus, masks were significantly important. Now, if it would have been something else, different type of protective equipment would have been what matters. So hear this point early on, and then let's talk about this in terms of leadership. Different viruses, different diseases, different problems require different protective equipment. A respiratory disorder requires masks in order to be protected. And in the same way, as it comes to leadership, different problems from being consumed with leadership will require different protective equipment. And so I just want to say this like on the front end. If you're not at danger of overworking, don't listen to people who tell you need to rest more. Okay? Like, that's not going to be your problem. And what I have found largely in my life is all the advice that people give on like, hey, here's a healthy response. We do the things that we're already good at doing instead of doing the things that we need to do. Let's take this illustration to the gym very quickly. Say people love to do the exercises that they're the strongest at. But those aren't the ones they need to keep doing. They need to do the ones that comparatively they're the weakest at. That's where their weak spots are. So I want to talk about your weak spots. I want to talk about where you're at danger as a leader. And I want to give you 4 different categories Not all of them will apply to you. I'm going to tell you at the end, one of them is going to apply to all of us that we do need to be aware of. But to say, hey, let's do the things that are unique to us individually. Let's do the things to protect ourselves that we are at the greatest risk for. So the 4 categories that I want to talk about is I want to talk about being burnt out. I want to talk about getting worn out. I want to talk about moral failure. And we're going to talk about pride. Burnout, worn out, moral failure, and pride. So the first one here, getting burnout. And Vij, after I go through this first one, I'm going to throw it to you and see if there's anything you want to add in here.
Sure.
So when we get burnout because we are overextended. We are overextended. We love what we're doing. We enjoy the work. We're good at the work. We're just doing too much of it. Too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. When I was a kid, I didn't realize that. So when I was like 5 years old, my family was on vacation and we bought the pack of vitamins, Flintstone vitamins, to be clear, and they were delicious. And I thought if one vitamin is good, then all the vitamins are great. Like I will be that much healthier. And so I ate all the vitamins. Unfortunately, my parents found out in time and got me medicine that made me throw up so I didn't die, which I was grateful for within that. But say like, hey, you may enjoy your work, but if all you do is work, if you are overextended physically, if you are overextended mentally, you will burn out. And so here's your PPE. Here's your personal protective equipment if that's you. For one, you need a rest schedule. Whether you're a person of faith or not, I believe you need to take a Sabbath. You need to have a day of the week that you take off. I believe you can get more done in 6 days than you can in 7. I believe by having 6 days that you work hard and having 1 day that you rest, and there is data that shows it.
Amen.
You will get more done. Another thing you need to do is you need to have a hobby. You need to have a hobby that is outside your work. And there's been all these studies that have shown that if your hobby is similar to your work, that it's actually not energizing because it feels like work. But if your hobby is very different from your work, by going and engaging in your hobby, you re-engage in your work with that much more energy. And so, Vij, let's throw it to you on rest schedule Sabbath, because that's something you've experimented with recently.
Oh, man. First of all, 2 things. We don't pre-record any of this content. Like we do pre-record, but we don't I don't know what you're talking about. We've said this several times.
Correct.
I just wrote something down about the Sabbath yesterday.
All right.
So
let's hear
can't wait to see. Well, hold on. Before we do that, just another thing about this topic, this burnout topic, is you and I are both type A.
Yeah.
We don't generally get tired in our minds.
And we love to work.
Right. We love to work. But man, this is such if you don't start here, the rest of them's not going to matter. Mm-hmm. The rest of your points. And what I wrote down is Sabbath isn't about taking a nap. It's about getting God in view. Sabbath isn't a vacation. It's a relocation in our minds of who it is that runs the world.
That's good.
And I was just like, man, if I can't get that right,
yep.
Like we set up Sabbath, we're like, it's a rest. It is, but it gets you ready to work. Mm-hmm. And I did this for a long time, and I could feel, even though my mind was telling me I wasn't burning out, my body was aching.
Yes.
And I'm not talking a physical ache. It was a spiritual, like, you're not going where you need to go because you're not resting in who you need to rest in.
Yeah.
And to your point, man, and then the hobby thing's a great point too, man. You see many people in relationships, even you can talk about marriages, is like the one of them has a hobby, the other one doesn't, so they will resort to their phone or something of that nature and think it's a hobby, but maybe that's what they do all day anyway. And it's like, oh no, you got to find something you're passionate about outside of what your career is, and that will sustain you. That will give you the energy to go back to your job, to your career, to the thing you love, because you actually have a release point.
That's
and
good.
This is a big thing for me because I be honest with you, I was having a hard time getting a Sabbath, and so I have set that up in a rhythm now that at 5:00 on Friday when I clock out, I don't clock out, but whatever you call it, when I'm done on Friday, from 5:00 on Friday until Saturday around 5:00, that is my 24 hours of which I am not typing, coding, creating graphics, doing anything. I'm just, I've set up those rhythms, and man, if you don't do that, you're gonna be hurting. It's gonna hurt you.
And what you find when you do it is you go, man, I am now excited to go back to work instead of begrudging. Like I'm itching. I'm ready to go.
Oh yeah, I'm looking. I mean, and that's not. I don't know how healthy that is, but I'm looking at the clock.
No, it's good.
I'm looking at the clock on Saturday, going, "Ooh,
yeah.
I feel rested. I feel rejuvenated. I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's go." Because I took that time.
Author Andy Crouch has talked about it from this aspect of saying that we were meant to have a work-rest rhythm, that we go from work to rest. And he said we've exchanged that work-rest rhythm to a toil and leisure. And toil is we're not really producing, but we're kind of clocked in. And leisure is we're not really resting, but we're not actually engaging in anything productive. It was just like, check your phone usage time on social media because that is all leisure. It is not restful in any way. You're not doing anything productive either within that time. And so just to acknowledge, man, that rest matters.
Oh, man, that's so good. So true.
So that's first one. First one is, man, if you are at risk of burnout because you're overextended, that's your PPE. That's what you need to engage in. Second one is a little different, and I want to clarify what the difference is. Second one is you are worn out. There's a difference between burnout and that you are worn out. There's a difference between being overextended and being overwhelmed. That's the key one what I want to dive into. There's a difference between being overextended and being overwhelmed. Overextended is a nature that I have done too much physically. My body cannot handle the pace that I am continuing to run out work-wise. Overwhelmed is a mental piece, okay? Overwhelmed is I've got too much going on in my head. I've got too many pieces that are coming together. It would say like I just know this for myself. I'm at risk of burnout because my tendency is to overextend myself. I don't feel overwhelmed. I don't know of times in my life that I ever felt overwhelmed, but overextended, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so here's your personal protective equipment. If that's you, if you're at risk of being overwhelmed, is most of the time when we get overwhelmed, we do the worst thing that we could possibly do because we're going counter to the PPE is we further isolate ourselves. When we feel mentally overwhelmed, most of us, and I'll speak particularly to men because I think this is more consistent with men, but I think it is a track record for everyone that we will consistently further isolate ourselves thinking that we need to personally, individually, in isolation, think ourselves out of our problems. And most of the time when we feel overwhelmed, it's because we have not shared the mental burden of what we're carrying with other people. Now, that's not saying necessarily colleagues. That's not saying necessarily your peers in your job, although it can be. But it needs to be other people that you can share. This is what I'm going through. This is what's heavy on my mind. And there is something that is healing about saying, this is my struggle, and someone going, me too.
Oh, man.
And it is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Because you go, you haven't solved my problems. All I'm aware is that you have problems too within this. But when you say, hey, this is my struggle, this is why I'm feeling overwhelmed, and someone says, me too, right back at you, man, it does wonders to lessen that burden.
You hit the nail on the head, man, with guys, with guys, men. For some reason, I don't know if it's just in our DNA, what it is, but we feel when we are overwhelmed that we need to go hide in a basement and isolate ourselves from the world, and that is going to be the recipe.
And as if we're going to re-emerge from it stronger and healthier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty. I am so guilty of this for multiple, over a decade of my life in which... I did exactly that. You get away from people who are actually experiencing the same thing as you, and all you needed to do was say something to them, and they would have said me too, and then we figure out what's wrong. Why aren't we able to overcome this predicament? And it's because we didn't share it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so third thing that will take you out is moral failure. It is acting in a way that compromises your character, acting in a way that all of a sudden you are no longer qualified because of a lack of integrity to do the job, to do the work that you feel called to do. Now, again, this could be anyone. It's probably everyone. But I do want to say that there are some of us we do a lot more towing the line when it comes to morality than others. There's some of us that are, we are a step away from throwing it all away. Where others, we've walked farther away from the cliff. So with acknowledgement that this does apply to everyone, here's the PPE for moral failure. You need accountability. You need people who have the freedom to ask you questions on any area of your life, who actually want to know the answer. And they're not just going to ask you about the things that are superficial and on the surface. They're going to ask about things that matter. So you need accountability. And then the second thing you need daily character deposits. So this is mine. Every day I read my Bible. Even days that I'm going to preach out of the Bible, I read my Bible. Not when I'm preaching out of the Bible. I do it at another time because I need daily character deposits. And those daily character deposits keep me away from the edge of the cliff. And then having accountability makes sure that I'm not inching closer over time. But to say, if you don't have that, just know you're at risk of moral failure. And there's some people who are hearing this now, and you have not gone anywhere for a month without a mask because you're at risk of getting this virus. And I just want to acknowledge within that, you should take the same level of seriousness when it comes to moral failure. Because if you don't have accountability, and if you don't have daily character deposits, it's like, my goodness, walking through the hospital floor where they keep all the COVID-19 patients without a mask or any PPE on, okay? That is what you need to do.
That's great. Quick question for you about that piece. You talked about knowing or having the people in your life that have the freedom to ask you those things. What do you look for in a coach for you? What are you looking for specifically in someone that says, "Hey, I'm going to let you have a seat at my table because I trust you"?
Someone really simple for me. Someone older than me who I trust their character. I don't want someone my age.
Yeah.
Because someone my age is struggling with the same things I'm struggling with, and they can't see far enough down the road to know the questions that they need to ask me because they haven't been through it.
That's good.
I want someone who's been through it. Now, when I'm 80, I don't know who that's going to be. Okay.
You got a few minutes.
That'll be there. Yeah, I'll trust that at the time.
That's good, though. That's good to know. A coach should be, in this case, is someone who's older, who's maybe had some more experience in the same line of work or the same types of things that you're trying to overcome or trying to work through, and that you trust them.
Yeah.
You trust their character, who they are, not what they do.
And then last one on here, the thing that'll take you out, and this is the one that applies to everyone, is pride. Pride. And you know it's coming because people don't want to work with you. You know it's coming. It's there because you're having a caustic effect on others. Pride. People who are very prideful don't realize it because everyone has quit giving them advice over time. And so if no one's coaching you, if no one's consulting you, if no one's kind of changing the trajectory of your life or giving you thoughts, it's because you're prideful. And you may think in your head, it's because I'm smart. No, it's because you're arrogant. Like you're not that smart. No one is. And that is how you know that pride has there. Now, we are all at risk of that. And so here is one of the biggest things you can do to break pride is you need to have people that you listen to. And I know that sounds so simple. If you're married, your spouse has your best interest at heart. And if you're prideful, you're thinking they're trying to one-up me and simply get what's best for themselves. That's not the case. No one gets married for that reason. Or if they do, they need to no longer be married, okay? But if that's you, we'll do marriage counseling, something like that. That'll be a whole different thing within there, okay? That's a different episode.
Yes.
But you need to have people that you're listening to and them ready. You need to do what they say. This is what we do, is whenever we face a crossroads in which we have a tendency to make a prideful, wrong decision, we ask people for advice until we eventually get the answer that we want to get. Yeah. You go, no. If you're asking more than one person, you're not seeking wisdom. If you're asking that many people, you're just seeking the answer that you're already looking for from someone who's as self-absorbed as you are. Find someone wise to listen to. Ask them their advice and do what they say.
That is great advice, and I'm assuming that's something that you've been doing for quite some time, and that's where you've kind of gotten where you've gotten today. What is something that you want someone to leave with today? Episode 28, PPE for leaders.
Man, I think the biggest thing within this is we have a tendency, if you've got a great bench press, all that person wants to do is bench press.
Yeah.
If you've got a great squat, all that person wants to do is squat. And go, no, don't do that. Like, know the thing that is likely to take you out. Be aware of your weakness. And then act in a way that will protect that weakness from destroying you. Not all PPE is the same, and it shouldn't be the same for each individual. You might not need to take a nap. You might already be taking too many naps.
Yeah.
But know your weakness and act in a way that will prevent that from destroying you.
That's great. That's where we'll leave it today. Man, thank you guys so much for joining us. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And we love hearing your stories of how the podcast is working in your life or business. And if you have a story, visit leadinghope.online or check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And send us to that. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.